How much time do I have? I want to make sure. Time for one more? All right. This gentleman had his hand up first. Go ahead.
Hi, Barack. I can hold this.
Yeah, go ahead. You can give it to him.
I'm speaking into her hand. It's very easy to feel hopeless these days because when you take a look at who we are economically, we are people who mainly make things that kill people. And our economy, every state is wrapped up, of course there's a lot of work, a lot of jobs wrapped up in the farm, but every state is about 50% invested in making things that blow people up. And if we don't do that, our economy is going to go in the toilet. So we have to kill people in order to keep our economy going.
You're talking about the defense industry?
Yeah, I'm talking about the military-industrial complex that Eisenhower predicted would happen, and it's here. You never hear this discussed on network TV, and you never hear it discussed by anybody. And if we don't change that from people who blow people up to people who actually go out and help people, we might find that eventually we have more friends than enemies. We wouldn't have to have all this stuff. How do we change who we are?
Well, let me say this. I mean, our defense industries, some of them I have big problems with, mainly because you get a lot of no-bid contracts or cost-plus contracts, and they say that they're going to deliver a plane for X billion dollars, and 10 years later, it turns out to be 10 times as much, and the plane doesn't work. And that's wasting a lot of taxpayer money. You also have systems that you also have defense systems that probably have outlived their usefulness. I mean, the fact is we don't need as many nuclear weapons as we've got, because as long as we have more than anybody else, that are more accurate and more powerful than anybody else by a factor of 2 or 3. For us to then have more than everybody else by a factor of 10 or 15 is overkill. And we should be trying, and actually creates more dangers for us because you've got more nuclear material that could end up in the wrong hands, and other countries decide, well, the way to be, strong is to have, these weapons. So I do think, I agree with you that we need to try to figure out how can we reduce our reliance on weapons that we're probably not going to use. Because most of our threats these days aren't in conventional military battles, but they have to do with insurgencies like what happened in Iraq and Afghanistan. I mean, no army can stand before us, but what does happen is that terrorists can cause us great damage, and we have to, in much more precise ways, hunt them down. Now, having said that, I do think we've got to maintain a very strong military. And I do want to make sure that our defense capabilities are maintained here in the United States, as opposed to what most recently happened with the tanker deal, where suddenly you've got a U.S. company, Boeing, not getting a multi-billion-dollar contract, instead going to a partnership that includes Airbus. That doesn't make sense. I mean, if we U.S. taxpayers are paying for it, then it seems to me that at least we should get the jobs and the benefits that are here. What we do have to promote in terms of job growth, though, is, I think, energy is going to be the most important job generator over the next 2, 3, 4 decades. And that's where we've got to make a big investment. That's where we can turn swords into plowshares, because if we can take some of the same spending and technological know-how that we invest currently in weapon systems, have that same mentality when it comes to figuring out how do we replace the internal combustion engine. which has been a great engine, but we've been using it for a long time. It's time we came up with something new. For us to invest what I've called for, $150 billion over 10 years, invested just in research and development in solar and wind and biodiesel, in making buildings more energy efficient, making cars more energy efficient, making appliances more energy efficient. If we do all that, it's a threefer. We save our environment, we create jobs and economic development, as well as lower over time our energy spending. And it's good for our national security, because a lot of the conflicts that necessitate all our military spending, frankly, has to do with our concerns about energy supplies. And if we're more energy sufficient, I mean, let's be honest. I'm not one of these people who believe that we invaded Iraq for oil. I think that George Bush had an ideological idea that he wanted to remake the Middle East, and this is how he was going to do it. But if you think that oil has nothing to do with why we're willing to send our young men and women to fight in Iraq and the Middle East, but we don't send them to Darfur to deal with a bunch of folks there, or we don't send them to Tibet to help people there, you know, I mean, you're not being realistic. You know, part of the reason that the Middle East is so important to us is not just humanitarian concerns, but it has to do with our economy will shut down if you had huge disruptions of our energy supply. That's just a fact. And if we're going to plan for a long-term secure future, then we've got to make sure that we are trying to figure out this energy puzzle here and now. And we've got the resources to do it. What's been missing is the political will from Washington. And that's a political will I want to supply. Listen, everybody's been wonderful. I appreciate the comments. For individuals who have additional comments, please contact us on our website. I mean, if you've got some ideas on CAFOs, you know, I could have one of my staff people call you up and you guys could talk. And this is a work in progress. If folks have ideas about how to help women in rural communities, make sure that they are getting their fair shake economically, give us those comments. We're constantly trying to improve our approach and our plans, and I won't be able to get any of this stuff done unless I've got your support. So thank you so much for taking the time. I appreciate it. Thank you.